Hello, hello, hello. Hello, Facebook world. It is 7 o'clock. Make sure my sound, hopefully my sound is okay. Give me a second. All right. Get myself situated. Okay, so hello Facebook. It is Tuesday and it's time to, start talking about a couple of things, having these conversations, because it's so important that we have these conversations. Having these conversations here will spill over, and hopefully you're having additional conversations beyond watching the video. That, at this point, tag a couple of people, tell them to come and join us so that we will have, some people in the room. But as I sit here, just to kind of go over a couple of things real fast, I want to make sure, I want to make sure that, something I keep talking about is making sure you are looking into what needs to be done, what steps you need to follow to get a state ID for your loved one. So we want to make sure we're actually getting those state IDs for our loved ones the same way that, we make sure that we're getting learner's permits. We want to make sure that individuals with intellectual disabilities are getting a state ID. Let's not rely on that school ID. And that happens more often than it really should. So we want to make sure that we're doing that. And that's something I'm going to keep talking about and mentioning, because I want to make sure that we, see them as equal, because that's a big part of things. And even though we don't consciously do it, it becomes one of those things that it's no rush to get the ID because maybe they have their school ID. And with their school ID, hey, they can get what they need. So, but it is just as important. So we want to make sure that, we're getting that state ID. Now, tonight, what I want to talk about is something that, when it comes to autism, not all families deal with it, but it is a part of our autism journey, and that's autism and aggression. That is something that we, have dealt with on our autism journey with Kendall. And it's one of those things that, no one really talks about, but we need to make sure that we're talking about it along with everything else. So in talking about it and, how things work for us, once again, I mentioned every week, I shared our story in the book, A Crusade for Kendall, and it's available on Amazon. And in that journey, we talk about those things that we dealt with Kendall when it comes to aggression. So what we, realized was that her aggression was related to communication and not being able to express herself. So in keeping that in mind, what we have realized over the years, because she's now 22, that her communication skills have improved. And because her communication skills have improved, then her, moments of aggression have, reduced. And that makes a big difference. So one of the things, when you start thinking about aggression, that aggression can happen from a meltdown. And a meltdown is different from a temper tantrum. A temper tantrum is, you won't give me the bubble gum and I'm just going to fall on the floor, and I know if I kick long enough, you'll give me the bubble gum. No. When we're thinking about a meltdown with an individual that's on the autism spectrum, typically several things could have possibly happened, or maybe one of, a couple of things may have happened. And it could be a sensory overload moment. It could be a moment of frustration that the need that they have, they can't verbally tell you what it is. And so as a result, that frustration happens and it comes in the form of a meltdown. That meltdown can be screaming. That meltdown can be throwing things, kicking, spitting, unfortunately, hurting themselves, hurting someone else, destruction of property. Those are things that can happen with a meltdown. And so no one really talks about the whole thing with the aggression. We see it, but nobody talks about it. And so I want to take this moment to talk about it and talk about how we noticed once we improved Kendall's, her communication skills improved and she was able to tell us her needs and her wants, that her levels of aggression changed. And the moments, the spans of those, aggressive moments. She could be mad when she was much younger, and she could stay mad, I promise you, almost for like an hour, if not longer. Now, if she gets upset, really and truly, we're able to kind of de escalate things pretty quickly with her. But one of the main things that I want to talk about when it comes to autism and aggression is the best thing we can try to do to minimize those moments is to be proactive. And yes, there may still be moments. However, we want to be proactive. And when I say be proactive, we want to think about some things we can do that we can possibly prevent that moment from happening, that meltdown from happening that could turn into aggression. So, in being proactive, it's a couple of things I want to go over tonight. Once again, remember I told you I keep my notes so I won't, forget what I'm talking about. So, what we've got to keep in mind is this as well. When we're dealing with moments of aggression, one of the things you've got to keep in mind as a caregiver is how you respond when that aggression presents itself. And what do I mean by that? I mean your emotions. Sometimes you've got to realize that you've got to step back because you're just as worked up as, that individual is. And believe me, what then happens is not what you want to happen. It basically becomes you're upset, they're upset. And I've said this before that an escalated adult cannot de-escalate an escalated child. That's that moment where you have to kind of step back and let someone else step in. So we've got to be aware of how we respond to moments when meltdowns happen and, maybe you have that aggression that presents with that meltdown. And let me just say, all individuals that are on the autism spectrum may not show aggression. I'm just sharing this because it is part of our journey. And I know no one really talks about that aggression. And so that aggression is real and that aggression does come out. And I want to make sure we're having these conversations so that, individuals that are dealing with that don't feel like they have to stay in isolation because no one's talking about it. They feel like it's a topic that, is just along with talking about autism. Aggression and autism really kind of is one of those taboo moments that people really don't want to talk about that because what parents or caregivers can feel like is they've done something wrong. So we want to make sure we're having these conversations. Now, as a caregiver, once again, I said I want to talk about how we can try to be proactive and being proactive to minimize those moments of aggression. So one of the ways you can be proactive is, once again, I told you I have to write down my notes so I don't forget what I want to talk about, is to count down. What do I mean by that? Transitioning from one situation to another can be a challenge for those on the autism spectrum. And that transition can be from one task to another. Simply telling that individual it's time for them to stop on the computer because it's time to eat dinner. And what we've got to be mindful of is that being proactive is what can we do to, keep that meltdown that could possibly turn into aggression from happening. So in being proactive, what we can do is if we know that it's, almost dinner time, one of the things we could do in being proactive is if it's about 5 minutes out, you want to start having a countdown moment, letting them know, hey, you have about 5 minutes before it's going to be dinner time. That way they're preparing themselves for what's about to end, that what they're doing right now is going to come to an end. This task is going to come to an end, and it may be something they really enjoy. And when it's something they really enjoy, of course, they don't want to pull away from it. They don't want to, leave it. So giving them a countdown, and that countdown could be done with, you could have a timer. If the person recognizes a timer, you can have one of the hourglass sand that kind of comes down, and they can watch that and they know once it runs out that their time is up. With the timer, you don't have to go out and buy anything. A lot of stoves have kitchen timers. You can turn on that timer as well. But one of the things I know for us, Kendall loves the computer. She definitely loves the computer. It's in an open area in our home, so she does not have the ability, because it's a desktop, to take it into her room. But she loves to be on the computer. So to avoid what we know could be a possible meltdown that could turn into aggression, we are proactive about it. And one of the things we did way back, we connected a device to that desktop, and it allows us to have a timer that will allow her to see that it's getting ready to turn off, because her time on it has come to an end. And that was really helpful at night when it was time for her to go to bed. Also in the morning before school, when she was still going to school every day, it helped because she would have that moment in that span that allowed her to get on the computer in the morning. And when she would get on the computer in the morning, guess what? She did not want to get off. So that timer let her see, it let her count down. She could see she had 5 more minutes left. And when that timer, cut off the computer, then she knew it was time for her to come downstairs and it was time to catch the bus. So that's one way we can be proactive. And being proactive like that is not just something that they do at school. We've got to use some of the same things that they're doing at school. And being proactive. And being proactive, basically, that's one way. Countdown. That's really what it comes down to. So I'm just looking. Thank you, ladies, for joining me. Hi, Kimberly. Hi, Yoki. And, of course, hello to my sister. I always tell everybody, I know everybody can't speak and say that their family is always there for them. I can definitely say that. So, going back to what we were talking about, one of the things to be proactive to, when you're concerned about, hey, Tiffany, miss you. And Tiffany, you are on vacation, so thank you for joining us. I hope you're enjoying your vacation during this fall break. So, going back to how do we deal with those moments when autism and aggression come together? When we have those, moments where you want to prevent the screaming and possibly the destruction of property, the hurting themselves or hurting someone else. So countdown, that's one way. That's being proactive. Another way, provide a choice. Sometimes we've got to look at, we need to, I see you, Tiffany. Sometimes we've got to make sure we're looking at the fact that in providing choices, that there are things that, they may have a choice that they cannot do, but then there are going to be things that we're going to give them a choice because it really still has to happen. And I talk about, I've mentioned this before, I think in maybe the masterclass I did, that with Kendall. Of course, we all have to brush our teeth. So Kendall has this new toothbrush, and a big part of the new toothbrush, the dentist suggested it, is that when she spends the 3 minutes, it will give her a smiley face. And, we're really excited about it. It's really been working well. We know that she likes to be independent. So, the first night she got the toothbrush, Rich went into the bathroom with her, and she was not having it. It was not about the toothbrush. It was the fact that he was in the bathroom and she felt like, I can do it. And that's her big thing because she's a big girl. I can do it. I can do it. So we knew we wanted to see the toothbrush to make sure she's actually spending the 3 minutes in the smiley face. So she now understands the choice is either one of us stands in the restroom when she's actually brushing her teeth, or she has to come and show us the smiley face. And that gave her a choice. So instead of us dealing with a meltdown, because we were in the bathroom with her, she's brushing her teeth, she didn't want us there, and we insisted on being there, we figured out a way to give her a choice. And so the choice is now she brings us the toothbrush when she's finished with her 3 minutes, and we see the smiley face. So it was something that, she's got to do. She's got to brush her teeth. But instead of fighting with her so that we can stay in the bathroom, the choice was, if we leave, you have to bring us the toothbrush so we can see the smiley face. So that's one way of being proactive. Choices. Proactive, choices. Think about when washing Kendall's hair. She does not like for me to wash her hair. And so to make her feel like, she has a choice because I have to wash her hair, I'll ask her, so Kendall, do you want me to wash your hair at 3 o'clock? Or do you want me to wash your hair at 4 o'clock? And of course, I know she's going to choose 4 o'clock because she does not want me to do it. But I gave her a choice. And so in giving her that choice, I have now avoided that meltdown. She knows at 4 o'clock that it's going to be time for her to get her hair washed. She's going to watch the clock because Kendall can tell time, digital and analog. I'm so appreciative of her elementary school teacher, Miss Brewer. She was phenomenal, and she made sure that Kendall could tell time both ways. So she's going to watch the time on the computer and realize, okay, it's almost 4 o'clock and it's time for me to, go downstairs so I can get my hair washed. But if we didn't do that, we would have a moment of a meltdown, which could turn into aggression. And that's what you want to try to prevent as much as you possibly can. Now, am I saying that you can always avoid having moments of a meltdown and moments of aggression? No. But we can definitely reduce or minimize how that meltdown or aggression presents itself. So believe me, we've had moments where she's gotten upset and, we've had holes in the wall, holes in the door, we've had things repaired. But we have realized when we provide her with, trying to be proactive, it really helps us. So countdowns have really helped with her aggression along with choices. Now, one of the other things is, and I mentioned communication. And I know that all, individuals that are on the autism spectrum may not be verbal. Some of them are pre-verbal. That means those words are coming along slowly. Some of them use devices. And the main thing is you want to find some kind of way that you are able to communicate with that individual, that they're able to express their needs and their wants. When they're able to give you their needs and their wants, it's going to reduce those moments where meltdowns can happen and aggression can happen. When you're not able, think about it, when you're not able to tell someone how frustrated you are about something, how it just boils up and boils up inside of you. So we want to make sure that, we figure out a way for them to communicate with us. Rather it's a device. If you have pictures, if you don't have pictures at home, ask their teacher. Ask the teacher at school what kind of system they're using to communicate if that individual is nonverbal. And you want to try to mimic what they're doing at school because it keeps things consistent between home and school. And that is so important as we work with, the teacher and the school and making sure we're working as a team for our loved ones that are on the spectrum. So 3 things so far: the countdown, choices, and trying to come up with a way to communicate. And that communication can occur in several different ways. But when an individual is able to give you, and let you know their needs and their wants, you take away moments where meltdowns can happen. And a meltdown can become aggression. And we want to minimize those as much as we possibly can. Minimize them from happening, or even minimizing the duration of how long it could possibly happen. So 3 things there so far. Now, another thing, there's another one because I made sure I have 5, is you want to make sure as a parent, guess what? That you are communicating effectively what you want them to do. And that means that you're not dragging it out with a whole lot of words that are unnecessary. If you want them to put their toys away, then simply put your toys away. Don't go into a whole nother, because you've been playing with them too long and I'm tired of seeing them on the floor. All of that's too much. You want to keep it short and to the point. If you want them to put the toys away, just say put your toys away. If you want them to put their book bag away, just say put your book bag away. Do not add any follow-up behind that. That then creates confusion because they're trying to process the first part of what you said and you've now said 3 additional things. And if you're not aware, individuals that are neurodivergent, and autism falls in that category, they have deficits in their executive functioning skills. And one of those things is, receiving that information and processing that information. So we want to keep those directives that we're giving short and to the point, exactly what we want to occur. And when we keep it short and to the point, it's going to help them complete that task. If you have 3 steps that you want to have them take care of, then you need to say the first one. And once they're finished with the first one, then you need to mention the second one. But you don't want to hit them with all 3 right off the bat, because that's going to cause confusion. And when confusion sets in and they're not doing what you've asked them to do, They become frustrated because they can tell you're frustrated, and what then happens? You have a meltdown. And that meltdown simply, could have been prevented if you had kind of worked through things a little differently and not added all the information when you just really wanted them to first put their clothes away, put their shoes away, pick up their toys. So we've got to make sure that we're communicating the right way. We've got to make sure we are being short and concise in what we say, that we're not dragging things out. If you have a whole lot more you want to say because you're frustrated and you say, I want you to pick up your toys, say it in your head or walk away and say it. But do not let all that information come out at that time, because it's going to be very confusing. And we want them to do what we've asked them to do. And that's the best way. Keep it short, give one step. And then in time, you may be able to add more than one step. But you want to try to work on just that one step command of what you're asking them, so that you don't have moments of meltdowns. If we can avoid those autism meltdowns that can become aggression, then let's do that. And that's what we're talking about. And so then the fifth thing I talked about before is being consistent. And when I say being consistent, yes, we need to be consistent between home and school. But what I mean when I say be consistent in how you operate day to day. What is the time that I'm going to have my bath? You want to be consistent in those moments. When you're consistent, it's going to, keep meltdowns away. So be consistent. If in the morning, which is I talked about before, the reason we put Kendall on the school bus, it allowed us to be consistent. That bus was going to come. That meant she was going to leave our house at a certain time, and it was going to arrive at the school within a certain window of time, and that was going to help, as opposed to her getting in a car with us to drop her off. And when we would do that, if you do that, it's never going to be the same time, because you never know how the drop-off line is going to be. So consistency helps when it comes to meltdowns. Keep things consistent. Whatever time is bedtime, let that be bedtime. If you say you need to be off that, device at 7:30, then guess what? You need to make sure you stick to that 7:30. And if that means you need to set a reminder for yourself so that you don't get distracted, you've got to do that. Because when we're not consistent, and then we've said we want you off the device at 7:30, and then you look up because you started doing something and it's 7:40, now you're worked up because your thought is, I told you to stop at 7:30, and you can see where your anxiety, your frustration then causes the individual to also become frustrated. And it was a situation that really could have been avoided. So we want to make sure we're doing those things that you just told someone this today. Sometimes we've got to make sure, it's amazing how you say something, I'll say the same thing. But yes, we want to make sure we're doing the things that are going to help minimize or prevent an autism meltdown, because that meltdown can turn into aggression. And it's not to say, I'm not saying all individuals on the autism spectrum are aggressive. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am definitely pointing out is that we have dealt with aggression, and that aggression has been moments that were extreme. So some of the things we learned along the way are the things I shared with you that we have put in place. We're very consistent about how we operate. Anyone that comes to visit us understands, and even if we're out of town, we're very consistent in what we do. When we're out of town, her bath time, her bedtime, they stay the same. We don't waver from that. We still provide those countdowns. We let her know that, I think they got upset with me when I was, yeah, sometimes people get upset. Sometimes people don't want to hear information that's really going to be helpful. And that's the part that we got to make sure that, stop being offended easily. Instead of being ready to be offended and being hurt and, ready to become combative, receive that message, that you're receiving. Take the message. If somebody's trying to tell you something to help you, they're not questioning your parenting, they're just giving you a suggestion that this probably could help things better between you and your child. So we've got to get better about taking those, moments of advice. And sometimes, yes, it's unsolicited advice. But instead of us automatically just going off sometime, think about what are they actually saying, and ask yourself, you know what, I wonder, will this work if I try this? So that's kind of where I want you to go with things right now. One of the things I hope you're doing when I finish these videos to keep those conversations going, that you're tagging someone, you're sharing, you're making sure you're reminding people that, hey, you may want to jump on here on Tuesday. She's going to have this talk. And I'm going to try to keep it as real as I possibly can when I have this talk. So I'm telling you this about aggression because we've dealt with it. In the last year, we literally patched several holes that we had just ignored for a while. We were just like, whatever. But we patched them. We patched the door. We patched walls. We had to go have paint matched because there was a very distinct color on one of the walls that had a hole in it. But, we've learned over the years. And what we realized, the more we can be proactive, the better things are. And so we want to make sure that we're being proactive to try to minimize meltdowns. And we really want to minimize those meltdowns if those meltdowns can become aggression for that individual. So choices help. Countdowns help. Parents, be consistent. That helps. Keep your communication short and to the point. That's going to make a big difference. Watch your emotions because it's all about you. And I'm trying to remember, sometimes I forget because I can go. And being proactive, I'm flipping back through so I won't forget my notes. Countdown, choices, let's see. Communication. Make sure you have a form of communication with that individual. That's the big one. Rather it's pictures, whatever the case may be. I remember seeing a story once with Nate Dogg. Rest in peace, he passed away a couple of years ago. But before he passed, he had a stroke. And his family developed a system that allowed him to communicate with them so that he could tell them his needs and his wants. They worked out their own communication system because they knew they needed to be able to communicate with him because he was going to become frustrated if he had a need and they couldn't figure out what it was. So we want to make sure that, yes, there are the ways out there of a system, a device. There are pictures, pecs. There may be real life images that you use showing that individual or someone else doing the task that you want. But you want to come up with some kind of way that you're able to communicate if that individual is not verbal, so that they're able to tell you their needs and their wants. So I hope that you all have found, the information tonight helpful. Because aggression is real, and aggression will keep people at home because they're so afraid of what can happen. But, when we help them by giving them some information, by sharing or tagging them in the video, then maybe they'll see, okay, you know what, maybe I need to try this countdown. Maybe I need to try providing choices so that I don't have the meltdown that I know is going to happen because you're inconsistent. So that nightly meltdown, if your time is inconsistent and when it's bath time and then bedtime, then you create that battle every night. And I don't know about anyone else, but I don't want to know my night's going to end every night with a battle when I could possibly reduce that battle or even have it go away completely by doing things differently. No one wants to know every night their night's going to end with a battle. That's just a lot on a parent or caregiver. So whatever you can do to minimize those moments, do that. And a big part of it is being proactive. And in being proactive, we can make some changes here. So thank you as I look over in the comments. Thank you, Kokisha, for joining me. I see my sister is still here. I see Tiffany, who, thank you again because you're on vacation enjoying Jamaica on this fall break that you're on right now. Hi, Kimberly. Hi, Yoki. And anyone else who watches it in, once someone shares it with you and you're able to catch up over the weekend, if you can leave a comment, you are free to send me questions ahead of time. If you're worried about a question and you don't want anyone to see you, asking that question, just send me a message. You can email me at info@kindle, KENDALLASC.org. You can actually inbox me on Facebook as well, because we've got to make sure we're having conversations. That's a big part of things. And in having those conversations, we got to make sure we're sharing with our loved ones, so that our loved ones are getting this information, so that they're able to step in and support us. So pull them in so they can support us. I'm trying to look and see. Yes, they do. Countdowns. I'm telling you, countdowns make a world of difference. And also, if I didn't mention it, with the countdown, the device we have on Kindle's desktop, we can actually operate it. Rich can operate it from his phone. So, it's one of those things that it's just a useful tool to have, because she knows when things are coming up. She knows I have a countdown, I have this many minutes. And as opposed to her just realizing, oh my goodness, and she's unprepared for that transition. That allows her to prepare mentally for that transition. So thank you again, everyone, for joining me. And of course, I intentionally picked the t-shirt I put on tonight. Let me just say, because it's nothing better than knowing that you graduated from the #1 HBCU in the country. So I had to put on my t-shirt tonight and represent, those of us that went to FAMU understand being part of the hump era is a special group, and I'm part of that era. And let me just give a shout out to most definitely, FAMU's entering freshman class of 1991, because we were amazing. We celebrated our 30 years, not too long ago. So we want to make sure that going back, what the focus was all about, that we're sharing this information with others. So share, tag, post, tell them to leave me a comment. I look back through the comments so I can possibly answer the questions and reach out. I respond to my messages in Facebook, so I do respond. If someone sends me a message, I will respond. I don't ignore them, because I want to be of help as much as I possibly can. That's a big reason why I made the transition from being a full-time school counselor to opening Kindle Autism Support and Consulting, because part of that for me is having some conversations making conversations available for parents that weren't there for us, that no one was talking about it, and it left us feeling alone a lot of times and ostracized. So having the conversations will only make things easier, because we will become a more inclusive society. We'll know when we see a child that's having a moment, instead of judging the parent, thinking that child is just a bad child, we'll realize, what, I think that parent is probably dealing with that child is having a meltdown, and they are on the autism spectrum. So instead of giving them the eye of judgment, you're giving them the eye of support. And maybe you can ask, is there anything you need me to do? So we want to make sure we're having these conversations so we can have a more inclusive society. So thank you again for those of you who have joined me tonight. And I hope you all will join me next week as we have this conversation again on whatever topic crosses my mind. That's what I try to deal with, unless someone sends me a message in Facebook or by email. So have a great one, everyone. Thank you again, everyone, for joining me. And don't forget to like, share, tag, all of those wonderful things to other people, so you can start having these conversations, because guess what? We are coming up on a holiday season. And that means we want to go visit family, or we want family to visit us. So how do we make that happen? We start conversations now. We try to make sure they know how to best support us during this holiday season. So have a good one, everyone, and I will see you all next week. Thank you.